Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Mortgages by Gretchen show, where I talk to real people in the field of real estate and business who are not only experts, but they're generous and willing to share their knowledge and wisdom with us here today. And the goal of the show is to gain some information and tips to help you in your goals in business and in owning real estate, and take some of the guesswork out of what to do or who to call in the process. So today, I'm very grateful to have Danielle Unsworth with me here today. And
Thank you.
Danielle comes from humble beginnings as a refugee child escaping from Cambodia with her parents and sister. She saw the struggles that her parents went through as new immigrants and was determined to find a way to achieve financial security. She started investing in real estate at 24 years old when she bought her first property. Since then, she has purchased multiple properties using the buy and hold strategy. In 2019, she hired a coach to help build a legal secondary suite and started using the BRRRR strategy to quickly grow her portfolio. She's currently investing in multifamily properties across Canada and working with joint venture partners to scale her portfolio. Currently holds over 100 units with various partners across Canada, the US, and Turks and Caicos. She's also passionate about providing women with the knowledge and confidence to start investing in real estate. She is co-founder of the Women Investors Network Canada, and she enjoys coaching beginners on how to buy their first rental property. I do happen to also know that she is adopting, and I think not for the first time, or for the first time.
It will be our first adoption, yes. But I
First
do have two
adoption,
other children.
two other children. You're adopting from, is it Thailand?
Thailand, yes.
Which is amazing. And you are a ballroom dancer. So you are a very interesting, diverse person. I'm really excited to chat with you today. And I will say, we first met, I think, around 6 years ago, and I'm not 100% sure where we first met. Do you know?
I do. I remember we met through a mutual contact. I was from, I think it was the Windsor group.
The Windrose Group, yeah.
Yeah, Windrose group, yes. And so we connected there, and then we met at a conference. I think it was the Wealth Hacker conference.
Yes, I do
In
remember that. Yep.
2019. Yes, 2019. And yeah, so we've been, in contact since then. And I'm so happy that, I'm able to refer clients to you as well when they need mortgages. So yeah, that's how I met. Because I remember when I met you, I loved your hair. So it really like stayed with me.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. So is there anything else you would like to say about yourself or your background before I ask you some questions?
Um, I just want to say, like, when I first bought my property, I was a full-time waitress, and I was just starting out in my like real job at the time. I was starting out as a administrative assistant in the government. So I just want to say, like, we all start from somewhere, and people need to sort of also realize that just because you see, the results that I have today doesn't mean it's always been like that. So I think it's really important for new investors that are listening to know that we all start somewhere. Like if you have zero properties right now, or you're a full-time waitress like I was, it's possible to really change the way you think, the way you are approaching real estate, and all of those decisions can change the trajectory of your life based on like small decisions at a time, I guess. That's what I would
Yeah,
say.
that's
Yeah.
really great to share for people to be able to know that you have that beginnings as well, those beginnings. Okay, cool. So you've invested in Canada and around the world. So why did you start investing in real estate?
So for me, I didn't know it was real estate investing. I wanted to buy a house when in my 20s because I didn't want to live at home. I was starting university and I didn't want to pay rent because I was always sort of brought up that, you should buy your own house, you shouldn't waste your money renting. So I always had that already ingrained in me. So when I went to, move out to go to university, I just wanted to pay myself that rent. So that's kind of how it started. And because I actually got a scholarship for my master's, the money that my mom had saved for my schooling, I actually ended up using some of that to buy the house instead, with my tip money from being a waitress, with my savings. So I just pretty much like pooled everything I had and figured out a way to buy my first property.
And did it take would you say it took courage, or was it kind of something you were always going to do and didn't think of it as courage?
So I think it wasn't courage so much as it was the will, I think. So I wanted to buy a house and it didn't occur to me that, I could have ended up in really like bad situations because I didn't know anything about like property management or, the risk of having a mortgage. I didn't know. So it was almost like being naive and excited at the same time. And you just kind of like go for it. And I also had a friend with me at that time that was kind of going through the same thing. So, when you have two friends that are looking for a house together, you're just kind of excited. You encourage each other without knowing that this is actually like a huge decision that could have really major impacts. And so I made tons of mistakes for that first deal. Like I didn't have a home inspection. I didn't have a pre-approval. I just, it was not like the typical first deal that I would ever recommend someone doing now, but it taught me a lot. And I think just not knowing like how bad things could have been just kind of gave me that will to keep going.
Yeah. Okay, that is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you do have a full-time job outside of real estate. You have these other things happening in your life. How do you manage your real estate portfolio when you have such a busy life?
So when I first started really focusing on my real estate business, it was around 2020. So during COVID is when I really like doubled down, tripled down on my efforts to grow my real estate business. Before that, I had a few properties that we had bought over the span of 10 years, just like a small portfolio. During COVID, my husband got laid off. So I really doubled down in order to grow our business so that we could have that extra income and provide for our family. So what I ended up doing was really like I was very intentional with my time. I put a lot of time like before work, after work, and then even after the kids would go to bed. So I was actually working all the time, all like till midnight sometimes on my computer, looking at deals, doing cash flow analysis, underwriting. And I would go to almost every networking opportunity after the kids would go to bed. So between 8 and 10, if there was a virtual event, I would be there. If there was an online class, I would be there. So I did so much of that learning during that time. And that's how I was able to acquire all the skills that I needed. And then once I realized that I'm at my max in terms of time management, I ended up outsourcing a lot of that. So I hired a virtual assistant, I hired a bookkeeper, I hired a property manager. So I started taking all of the different roles that I was doing and then just actually delegating it. So now I have three virtual assistants, a social media manager, a property manager. So I ended up just, removing some of those hats from myself and outsourcing it. And that's how I'm able to continue to grow the business without working till midnight and waking up before the kids. So that's how I went about it. But I did do that at the beginning. And I feel like that's also an important phase because then you actually know how things are run, how much time is needed for X task, so that when you do outsource that task, you know what the output is going to be like, right? So if someone is taking X, like 10 hours to do something that you know should only take two, you can justify that because you've done it yourself before.
Yeah.
So really,
Okay.
it's like learning to time management and then learning to delegate and then finding the people that are going to do those jobs either better than you or quicker than you so that you can continue to better utilize your time for other things.
Okay. And what are, I know it could be a whole conversation, but just a few of the things that your virtual assistants do for you that you don't do yourself.
So so I have several virtual assistants. So one of them one of them is organizing my documents. Like I have a really great system right now because of all the different deals that I'm involved in. Each deal, each property has its own folder and then subfolders. So she'll go into my email and just organize those documents, right? Download what's necessary, put them in the correct folders, sending out like email requests for certain things, like for my coaching program, for example, my virtual assistant will draft the contract, send it through eDoc for me. So things like that. So it really can be anything, but you do have to put in the time to do the training as well. And when I hired my virtual assistant, I dedicated a whole month to train and make sure that she understood how I like to communicate with my clients, my investors, my partners. I have another virtual assistant that will create presentations for me. So whenever I do like a webinar, I'll have an outline of what I want to talk about, and I'll send that to her, and she'll create like a beautiful presentation. And then I go back in and I do the editing and add whatever like special touches that I want. But so those are all things that I have now delegated, when before I would be, you know, on the computer at 11:30 at night creating my own presentations. And so I don't do that anymore, which is really great. But it took me a lot of like time to get here.
Yeah, but that's great. That's really great to hear that you're there and that how you got there. So that's valuable. Okay, so on Instagram, where I keep up with everything that you're doing, or maybe not everything, but I try to see what you're up to, and you're so great on Instagram. You mentioned that you have a new strategy for the coming year, and can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So I am focusing more on new build, new construction versus buying the older properties and then, burying them like we used to, where you would renovate, refinance, and then try to repeat. Because I'm finding with that strategy, it's much more difficult, A, to get a property that has enough like equity that you can, actually renovate it and then increase it. And then the construction I find is not as reliable as it used to be in terms of like the supply and then the timelines. And then the financing is also another, obstacle I'm seeing now with the interest rates, and then the delays in terms of like either just a renewal or refinancing. So everything is just taking a lot longer. But when you're looking at pre-construction or new builds like multifamily, um, I've noticed that CMHC prefers those because you're creating new housing versus using existing homes and then just renovating them. So that's my personal experience so far, and I'm really enjoying it because I don't have to worry about like, repairs and roof and windows and furnace or anything like that, because everything is new. So we're pretty much maintenance free almost for at least like 15 years.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
yes, because it's like buying like if you were buying a single family home and it's brand new, you're not going to be worried about your windows and your roof for quite some time.
Okay. And so when you say multifamily, like how many units are you most?
Well, the last one that we bought was actually 6 units, but it's 3 townhomes with legal suites on the ground floor. So the block would be 6 units,
So you
but
would
we did
buy
sell them
three in a row
individually.
from a builder? That
Exactly,
okay.
exactly.
Cool.
So it would be part of like a community where you could go in there and buy a block. You could do a block of 8, 6. If you wanted, you could buy 2 blocks and own 8 units or 12, just depending on what you want to buy. But I've noticed it's much easier to manage. It's much easier to rent out. You have higher quality of tenants. So to me, that makes sense for where I want to be in terms of like not wanting to manage any renovations and not having to worry about uh, financing and things like that. So we pay a property manager, they take care of the leasing and the tenants, and we know that it's going to be pretty much like hassle free for at least a decade.
And did you decide on specific location, or were you open to a number of locations, or do you mind talking about the location?
Yeah, no problem. So this property was purchased in Alberta because the deal came to us through a contact that we knew. But I am open to other markets. I do like Alberta right now just because um, it's more friendly in terms of like landlord laws and things like that. So and there's no land transfer tax. So everything kind of helps. And so that's where we purchased our last property, and we were looking at another one a few weeks ago, but it didn't work out. But I'm always keeping an eye out for those kinds of deals.
Okay, that is very cool.
Mhm.
So you mentioned wanting to help women invest, especially help them in real estate. Um, any specific reason why women? Obviously, you are a woman, but
Yes. So to me, it's really important to me to help women learn about real estate investing or just, being more financially secure in general. Because when I grew up, this is a story that really like affects me. And I only started sharing this recently, but when I was 10 years old, my mother, who was a single mom at the time, she needed the money, to pay for expenses, etc. And because she didn't know about refinancing and like other possible options, she ended up selling the house that we had to, get access to that capital. And so for me, I'm on a mission to educate and help women know that there are other options besides selling your home. You can do creative financing, you can bring in partners, you can get a secured loan, you can refinance. So there's a lot of different options where you don't have to lose your home. And so for me, like sometimes I still think about that property. Like it's in Ottawa. So sometimes we'll drive by. I'm like, oh my God, like I wish we hadn't sold it. But I mean, I was only 10 at the time, right? So I didn't know anything about this real estate world. But
yeah,
that story comes to mind a lot and often. So that's why for me, it's really important so that I can help other women who may be in that situation or who may find themselves in that situation in the future to know that there are other options. You don't have to sell your home because after selling that home, we were pretty much renting for many years after that because we were not able to accumulate. My mom was not able to accumulate a down payment again because she needed that capital to pay her expenses. And so we didn't own a home for another, I want to say, maybe 10 years after that. So,
that's
yeah.
really good. Yeah, as you talk, I'm actually thinking of an existing client of mine having some challenges and thinking there may be some ideas for her that I hadn't
Mhm.
even thought to mention to her. So, very good
Exactly.
point.
So that's sort of why it's really important for me. And, whenever I hear women who feel like they're stuck or they just want more, I I feel that real estate investing is a great tool to feel that security. I don't because at the end of the day, you're always going to own a home and then you can use the home to do so many things with it. You can leverage it, you can rent out a room if you have to, like at least you have somewhere to live, which is like one of the essentials, right? So I
Yeah,
just want people to know that you don't need to lose your home if you ever need to access capital. There's options, and selling should be like at the lot, like at the bottom.
yeah, that's great. Um, any other new or exciting projects you're working on?
Well, I am learning about this new strategy called infinite banking concept. I don't know if you've heard of it, Gretchen,
I
but
have, but yeah, I don't. I couldn't explain it. So I'd love to hear
okay,
what
sure.
you have to say.
So I recently was approved for a policy a few weeks ago, and I'm implementing this strategy. But um, I mean, I'm just speaking on like from my own experience. I'm not the expert on this, but I am interested in learning more. So what it entails really is that you buy a life insurance policy and you use it as an investment tool so that when your policy grows, kind of like a home that has equity built in it, you can then leverage it, borrow against the policy, kind of like a HELOC, and then you use that to invest. So that's kind of how I understand it. And I'm going to try it this year and see what that unfolds. And if it's what I think it's going to be, I think it can be a huge um, benefit for other investors and other women to learn about it as well. Because sometimes, like, you learn about a strategy and then you don't realize how powerful it is until like years later, right? Same thing, like when I first learned about the burr, you were like, oh my God, how did I not know about this strategy years ago? And then all of a sudden everybody's doing it. So I feel like this could be one of those strategies and tools that people in 5 years will be like, oh my good, I should have hopped on this 5 years ago. So that's kind of where I am. So I'll let you know how it goes, but I'm very excited about it. I wanted to make sure that I tap into a new resource if it's available to me.
Yeah. Okay. That I would definitely want to hear more about it. Um, you have a great personality. What would you say is your greatest asset when it comes to investing in terms of your personality?
So
Or
thank
your
you for that.
traits or your assets. So some of the things about you, because you have a lot of great things about you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think for me personally, what I've heard, like the feedback that I've been receiving over the last few years since I've put myself out there on social media, people often say I'm really easy to talk to. I'm very relatable. And so I find that being someone that is very open to receiving feedback and to listening, it's much easier to present a deal to someone and explain things to them when I'm open to listening to their questions and, you know, going through different steps and processes with them and not feel they don't need to feel like I'm intimidating or I'm explaining it in a way that they don't understand. And so for me, I think being authentic and being very open helps a lot with real estate. And I also love to teach just in general. Like ever since I was a little girl, I love teaching others. I like seeing like the light bulb just like go off. It brings me a lot of joy. So whenever I'm able to teach others how to, analyze a deal or understand the BRRRR process or a refinance, it just makes me really happy. And I know that they can take that knowledge and do something really great with it. And that's one of the reasons why I do coaching. I don't coach a lot of students just because of my time constraints. So I usually only take on like 2 or 3 students at a time until they're finished their program, and then I'll take on the next batch. But I would say like being able to deliver a complex message or a complex concept into easy, digestible content is really an important skill set to have as an investor.
That's great. Those were two skills I didn't even know you had some. The list keeps growing.
Oh, you're too kind, Gretchen. Thank
No,
you.
I mean it. I mean it. So, all right. So I'm going to ask top 3 tips for new investors, but you can say 1 or 2, whatever number you feel is comes
Sure.
to mind.
So for me, I always think back of like, okay, when I started, what would have been really useful for me, right? So the first one is really like not sharing everything that you want to do with everybody all the time. Because at the time when you're just starting out, the people in your network are probably not people who are ready to hear your big goals in real estate or in finances. Because when you start off your journey, usually you're closer with people who are doing what you used to do. So I would say surrounding yourself with people who are doing what you want to do, let's say in 5 years, that's really who you need to be sharing your goals with instead of like your close knit. And it's kind of maybe not everybody will agree with this, but for me, it's like if you have a coach that's buying houses and duplexing them and that's what you want to do, that's who you're going to share your goals with, not the person that doesn't understand real estate, because they're not going to say things that are going to encourage you to want to continue, and they might even discourage you and then you won't pursue anything, right? So just being careful who you share your goals with and making sure the person you share it with, they're doing what you want to do so they can actually encourage you and keep you accountable, and you'll actually want to feel, you'll feel motivated to do it. And then the second thing I would say is like, don't be afraid to spend money on yourself. This was like my biggest kind of like light bulb moment. I was so frugal with myself when I started. Like, I did not want to pay for anything because I came from a scarcity mindset where like things cost too much money or I can't afford to pay for this. And so I just only went to like free events, free webinars, and anything that cost money, I wouldn't attend because I didn't want to pay for it. But once I started paying for things, that's when I actually started seeing the most results. So when I paid for my coach, when I paid for like online courses, because I paid for them, I was way more like it. I was way more intentional about how to use that time, right? So, if you're
You
paying a
valued
thousand
it.
dollars, exactly. If you pay $1,000 for an online course, you're gonna probably finish it versus when you sign up for a free course. Like half the time people don't even continue, right? When it's free. So don't be afraid to pay money to learn and to grow, because that's when you see the results. And the third thing I would say, like as an investor, just make sure you really know who you're going to work with, right? Sometimes it's really exciting. You want to, take on this project with somebody, but if you don't have any prior projects with them, you may want to do like a smaller deal, like a small, like promissory note first, for like 6 months, a year, just to make sure that you're on the same path, you have the same goals, because sometimes you may get excited about the project and then down the road you realize you actually don't have the same goals, and then it gets way more complicated to get out of that project or deal. And so it's really just making sure that you set expectations right from the beginning so that there's no miscommunication.
I agree. I learned that as well myself. So okay.
Yes.
And you have a young family, so do your children and your husband participate in the real estate side of things?
Yeah, so they all know how much I love real estate. My son Carter is 11 and he's reading Rich Dad Poor Dad right now, and he loves it. He understands mortgages, interest rates, because he hears me talking about it all the time. My little guy is 8. He knows, like, I explain it in a way where, like, mommy buys houses and then mommy helps people, have homes, and then we take care of the homes so that they have somewhere safe and clean to live. And so he understands that concept. And then my husband is an aircraft mechanic, so he has his own career, but he does a lot of the management for our local properties here. But like I like to say, like, I'm the face of our business, but really it's like a family unit in the background.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So what would your last piece of advice for Canadians be right now?
So I would say right now, I know everybody is really nervous about buying because of interest rates, because of the current market. But when I bought my first property, it was in 2008. So if you remember 2008, it was not a really good situation, right? But looking back now, I wish I had bought more, to be honest with you, at that time. And so, I mean, it is a different market now than it was in 2008, but I would say, like, don't be scared to buy, even if you're not really like sure what to buy. Just make sure that whatever you're buying right now is a property that you would want to live in. Because if you want to live in it, chances are, if you're ever stuck, you can sell it and someone else will buy it. So don't just get in the market in like a shady area and, not know what kind of tenants you would be able to rent that property to. So if you are going to buy a property, make sure it's a property that you yourself would live in there if it's your first property. If you're already an intermediate investor, now is probably a really good time to look for deals, because interest rates are supposed to go down, your competition is going to start to come up. So it's really important to have a clear idea if you're looking to grow your portfolio, and start focusing and looking for those deals now. So those would be my advice to new investors and like seasoned investors.
Okay. Well, your information and answers have been so helpful. I think everybody who watches this is going to be really appreciative. And thank you so much for your sharing and being so open.
Thank you, Gretchen. Anytime I'm here, people can connect with me on Instagram.
And
It's
what's how are you listed on Instagram? What's your
it's actually it's my name, so it's at Danielle.Unsworth. And
okay.
I'm most active there, or they can go on my website. I have lots of information on there as well. And it's DanielleUnsworth.com. Very easy.
Okay, perfect. Great. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.